Courtney, thank you very much for joining us on the Primate Live.
My pleasure.
Back to American Haunting though. I'm working with Donald and Sissy Spacek.
That was great.
Yeah. What would you say, from someone like Donald, what did you think your biggest learning was from him, working with him at the time?
I mean, he's never not ready, this guy. I mean, first of all, he's a sweet, sweet man and a very funny man, and gives a good levity on set. So, you know, he makes everybody happy, so it just changes the environment there, which is great. You know, always making jokes. But then as soon as the camera's on, he just turns it on automatically, and he's just fantastic. I mean, you know, with Donald, it's interesting because, you know, he said to me, because I was a fairly new director at the time, he said to me, you know, when you want to give me adjustments, you need to think of the words. And I said, okay, you know, thinking, well, that's what we do. What he meant was 2 or 3 words.
Right.
In other words, you really have to sit there and think, what are the 2 or 3 words I want to use to adjust him on this scene? Because if I go any further than 2 or 3 words, he's basically not going to listen.
Huh.
You know, it's a really good exercise at the end of the day, because boy does it train you really quickly to really surmise and get to the exact point of what you think can be adjusted. Now, if you come up with the 2 or 3 words that actually improve, you know, what he started with, and you're starting with such a great place with a guy like Donald and all of his talent, then, you know, he is so grateful for that direction. And so that was a great experience, just going through it like that. But I mean, he's just, you know, amazing. Donald is, what can you say, 115 films at the time, I think, when he did the movie.
Obviously something that stays with you throughout your career, I'm sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And, you know, also a very nice collaborative man. I mean, you know, when he got there, I was doing an action sequence, you know, the carriage sequence that flips over, and that's all practical in the movie. There was no CG involved with it. Okay. So it was a long sequence to shoot, and obviously a very complicated sequence because, you know, it's of the nature of what it was. It was a real 5,000-pound carriage. It was real horses. There were real people on it when it flipped, and had to land right side up, and you know, it was a big deal. So a lot of things could have gone wrong. So him and Sissy were in the hotel that week, and he actually wanted the script, you know, on the computer so he could go through it with her, make all of his notes and suggested changes to it. Then when I was done shooting 6 days that first week, then I sat down with him and Sissy that Sunday, and he had a whole set of notes printed out, line by line, a new like version of the script printed out, which obviously then we agreed on and changed again. But the amount of work and preparation that he did was fantastic. I mean, just, you know, consummate professional. And I had been on the phone with Sissy probably for literally 8 weeks before we ever got to Romania, working on the script with her at least 5-6 hours a day on the phone. She would be gardening, she would be doing things, and we'd go through a certain number of pages, and I'd change the pages, and I'd send them through to her, and then she'd go through again and go through again, and she taught me a lot about shaving unnecessary dialogue and unnecessary repetitive things. And it's interesting, now we get scripts in, and as soon as I get them in time for production, a lot of what I learned there I incorporate automatically.
Talking about your producer credits, working a lot with Joel Silver. What's the relationship like there, and how did that sort of come about?
Well, originally it started 15 years ago with Dungeons & Dragons, because he was my executive producer on Dungeons & Dragons. So I met him when I first came to LA within a couple of years. And then, you know, he's been sort of a mentor all the way along, and obviously one of the most prolific producers out there, and super successful. And moving forward in the last couple of years, I wanted to do a sort of offshoot of After Dark Originals and Horrorfest, using the same idea of a festival of a certain genre of films, and action was a genre I've always been interested in and, you know, wanted to move to. So I went to Joel, you know, because he makes big $100 million blockbuster, or $100 million plus blockbuster films. So I figured, though, you know, if you were an action producer or director or writer coming to Hollywood, one of the first people you'd want to get your film made by would be Joel Silver. You know, that's just the dream, if you will.
Sure.
So I figured he must have a whole bunch of scripts at sort of the $5 to $7 million lower scale budget range, sitting in his company that just didn't fit into his financial model to make a movie. You know, he couldn't, it just wouldn't work in the Warner Brothers system and what he's got set up. So I said to him, if you've got these, maybe you could be like the godfather of this action fest, if you will. And, you know, we could, you know, find a bunch of these films and filmmakers that have come to you, and choreographers and talent, you know, across the board in the action genre, and we could make, you know, an After Dark action series.
Sure.
So he liked the idea, and so that's basically how that started.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And now, talking about action stars and blockbusters, you've recently come in from overseas where you're working with Stallone.
Yes, no, from New Orleans, which is another. We also work with Joel on his Dark Castle pictures, which are bigger budget movies. Those are sort of, you know, $20 million plus movies, and they all go out wide through Warner Brothers. And the first one that we did together was a movie called Bullet to the Head.
Yes.
And Stallone's the star of that movie. Strangely, I'm following Stallone around this year because I'm on my way to Bulgaria now to do another one of our action series movies, and he's shooting Expendables 2 there right now.
Yeah.
So I hear Arnie's there, and Statham's there, and Chuck Norris is there, and Bruce Willis just left yesterday.
Okay,
I get a daily update because we're prepping there on exactly who's in the hotel.
Okay, nice. But
it's a hotel.
In terms of acting though, I know you've done some voice work before, but have you considered doing acting?
No, I never really wanted to be in front of the camera, always behind the camera, even from when I was a small kid growing up on sets. The voice work I did was in American Haunting because we were trying to combine a male and female voice for the entity so that you wouldn't really be able to tell that it had come from Rachel Hurtwood's character, from Betsy. So we wanted to have it sort of have male and female elements to it, especially with the nature of the story and what the reveal of the film is. So we did the voice together, you know, as far as voiceovering it in the ADR stage.
Okay. But obviously, you know, someone like Stallone, who's ticked every box in the acting world, would be the perfect person to learn from if you're going to do some acting sort of blockbuster thing.
I would say so, yeah. He's got quite a little... I mean, how many actors can you find that have actually stayed relatively on top for 35 years?
Thank you very much for your time, Courtney.
My pleasure.
Cheers.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.